On July 29, 2025, at 11:25 in the morning local time, the Kamchatka Peninsula of Russia moved. Not metaphorically, not seismically, in the abstract way the word is usually used. The southern Kamchatka Peninsula physically shifted 2 meters to the southeast, permanently, in approximately 4.5 minutes. The earthquake that caused it registered at magnitude 8.8. It is the largest earthquake to strike the planet since the 2011 Tohoku disaster in Japan. It ranks among the 10 most powerful earthquakes recorded by modern instruments in all of human history, and the tsunami it generated crossed the Pacific Ocean in every direction simultaneously, reaching Alaska, Hawaii, Japan, and the California coast within hours. It preceded the Venezuela doublet by 11 months. It preceded the Philippines M7.8 by 12 months. It preceded the Sanriku M7.7 by 8 months. And it preceded the awakening of a volcano that had never erupted in recorded human history by 5 days. This is the earthquake that set the stage for everything that has happened in 2026, and its connection to North America's fault systems has never been fully explained. To understand what a magnitude 8.8 earthquake actually does to the planet, start with the numbers. A M8.8 releases approximately 27 times more energy than a M8.0. It releases approximately 900 times more energy than a M7.5, the same magnitude as the Venezuela doublet that killed over 4,000 people. The fault area that ruptured on July 29, 2025, was approximately 390 kilometers long and 140 kilometers wide, a rupture surface roughly the size of the state of New Mexico, slipping an average of several meters in 4.5 minutes. The energy released was equivalent to more than 27 atomic bombs detonating simultaneously in the crust of the Earth. And all of that energy had to go somewhere. It went into seismic waves, 3 types, traveling at different speeds in every direction simultaneously. The compressional P waves reached Alaska within minutes. The shearing S waves followed. And then came the surface waves, the long-period Rayleigh and Love waves that travel along the crust of the Earth at thousands of kilometers per hour, carrying energy that had originated in the Kamchatka Peninsula, across the Pacific Ocean, around the curve of the planet, and into every fault system on every continent within hours of the rupture. The Alaska Earthquake Center documented the surface wave arrivals in real time. Within hours of the M8.8, seismometers across Alaska recorded the passage of these waves. Amplitudes clear on every sensitive instrument in the network, passing through a region already under elevated seismic alert from a magnitude 7.3 earthquake at Sandpoint, Alaska, just 13 days earlier. Alaska's fault systems experienced 2 significant energy pulses within 2 weeks, one from a nearby fault, one from a megathrust 3,000 kilometers away. The Alaska Earthquake Center stated it was unlikely that the Kamchatka event triggered increased activity along the Alaska Aleutian subduction zone. That statement was made on July 30th, 2025, the day after the earthquake. What happened in the months that followed is the rest of the story. 5 days after the M8.8, on August 3, 2025, a volcano on the Kamchatka Peninsula that had no documented eruptions in the historical record produced a 6-kilometer eruption plume. Krasheninnikov volcano, previously considered dormant, erupted for the first time in human history. The Science Journal paper published in Science in 2026, documenting the Kamchatka earthquake, described this explicitly. The event sparked triggering volcanic activity in the region. This is not an obscure mechanism. The relationship between large earthquakes and subsequent volcanic activity, documented in the peer-reviewed literature going back decades, involves seismic waves passing through magma chambers and partially molten rock, disturbing the pressure equilibrium that keeps magma below the surface, and providing the final perturbation needed to initiate eruption in a volcanic system already approaching instability. Now trace the surface waves from Kamchatka northeast along the Aleutian Arc. This is not a metaphor. The Aleutian Arc is a geological continuation of the Kuril-Kamchatka subduction zone, the same Pacific plate subducting beneath North America, the same fault geometry, the same mechanism. The surface waves from the M8.8 traveled through a subduction zone that is structurally related to the one that produced them, passing through the volcanic centers of the Aleutian Islands, Great Sitkin, which has been erupting continuously since July 2021, and arriving at the Alaska Peninsula, where Mount Kuprianov sits, the volcano with no historical eruptions, the one that began showing magmatic intrusion in February 2026, 6 months after the Kamchatka earthquake sent surface waves through the Alaska Peninsula. The one whose SO2 emissions and ground deformation USGS detected in June 2026, confirming fresh magma at shallow depth beneath a glaciated stratovolcano with no monitoring network capable of detecting rapid escalation. The connection is not confirmed by peer-reviewed literature specifically linking the Kamchatka M8.8 to Kuprianov's 2026 awakening, but the documented mechanism, surface waves from large earthquakes triggering volcanic unrest in systems already approaching instability, is exactly what the science paper described happening at Krasheninnikov 5 days after the M8.8, and Kuprianov was 6 months later, in a geological structure directly connected to the subduction zone through which those waves traveled. Continue the path south. The surface waves from the Kamchatka M8.8 crossed the Gulf of Alaska and reached the Pacific Northwest, the Cascadia subduction zone, where the Juan de Fuca plate is locked against the North American plate at 4 centimeters per year, where the last full rupture was January 26, 1700, and where 2026 research published in Science Advances just confirmed the subducting plate is actively tearing apart beneath Vancouver Island. Cascadia was already at its most stressed state in centuries. The M8.8 surface waves passed through it on July 29, 2025. What those waves did to the slow slip behavior, the interseismic coupling measurements, and the stress state of a fault that University of Washington researchers confirmed in February 2026 is showing anomalous central segment movement that is a question the scientific literature has not yet answered. Continue the path south. The surface waves reached California. EMSC data confirmed tsunami wave detections on the California coast, physical evidence that wave energy from Kamchatka reached the California coastline. Seismic surface waves travel faster than tsunami waves, passing through the crust rather than the ocean. They pass through the San Andreas fault system, confirmed at its highest stress level in 1,000 years. They pass through Clear Lake Volcanic Field, rated high threat potential, which produced 262 earthquakes in a single week in July 2026. They pass through the Puente Hills blind thrust beneath downtown Los Angeles, which has never ruptured in recorded history. Stop for a moment. The question is not whether the M8.8 directly caused any of these subsequent events. Direct causation across these distances is scientifically extraordinary and would require specific evidence that does not exist in the current literature. The question is more precise. What does the most powerful earthquake since 2011 do to fault systems that are already at or near their historical stress maximums when it sends surface waves through them? The documented answer from the Krasheninnikov eruption 5 days after the M8.8 is, in a system already approaching instability, it can be enough to push it over. The undocumented but physically plausible answer for the fault systems the waves pass through between Kamchatka and California is, we do not know yet. The monitoring data is still being collected. The stress transfer calculations are still being run. The slow slip measurements at Cascadia are still being analyzed. And the timeline of events in 2026, Kuprianov awakening, Japan M7.7, Philippines M7.8, Venezuela M7.5, California's fault systems at millennium high stress, Clear Lake swarms, follows the surface wave path from Kamchatka the way a lit fuse follows a trail of powder. The Alaska Earthquake Center said on July 30, 2025, that it was unlikely the Kamchatka event triggered increased activity along the Alaska-Aleutian subduction zone. They were speaking about the immediate aftermath. They were right to be cautious. They were speaking before Kuprianov showed magma at shallow depth, before the Japan M7.7, before Venezuela, before Clear Lake swarms, before the science paper confirmed the M8.8 triggered volcanic activity, before the Cascadia plate tear was mapped. The proof is not a single study, it is a sequence. An M8.8 triggers a historically unprecedented volcanic eruption 5 days later on the same peninsula. Surface waves cross the Pacific and reach Alaska, the Pacific Northwest, and California. 6 months later, an unmonitored Alaskan stratovolcano shows its first magmatic intrusion in recorded history. 11 months later, the most active seismic period in a decade produces major earthquakes on 3 separate fault systems. And the fault systems that receive that energy are all confirmed, independently, to be at their highest stress levels in decades or centuries. That is the proof. Not a single line of causation. a convergence of events along the exact path that the waves traveled. Subscribe to Seismic Alert. We trace the path. We will keep watching where it leads.